A couple of friends of mine early on in their relationship came up with a certain whistle that they could use if they ever got separated. They said it came in handy in places like the grocery store when they were navigating different aisles and they had to find one another. Their secret whistle was unique to their relationship, and upon hearing it, they knew one was trying to find the other. They said it always worked. And 20 years later, they still use it, and it has evolved into a sound of endearment and love. The writer in our Gospel of John shares a similar description and image of Jesus proclaiming that he is the good shepherd whose flock knows his voice, not so much his whistle, and they come running when they hear it. He goes on to say that sheep run away from a voice that they don't recognize. Since my partner Brett breeds sheep, I've spent some time around them the last couple of years, and I can attest to this. Other than one sheep named Lafayette who is bottle fed and thinks he's a dog, the rest go running upon my entering. We're supposed to be sheep in this analogy, but I think we get wooed by voices other than Jesus' voice, promising fame and fortune and safety. Easy answers and quick fixes. Too good to be true promises, which usually result in a broken heart, disenfranchisement, and disillusionment. But we're not alone. The angler disciples listening to this explanation from Jesus don't understand his herdsman metaphor either. Jesus goes on explaining that as the shepherd of the flock, he is also the gatekeeper, a protector and provider of green pastures and bread and wine and abundant life, a shepherd who gives his own life for the benefit of others. This is quite the promise in Jesus' time. It's a subtle critique of the imperial rule of the political empire of the day, and it exposes the false promises that ended in rates of high food insecurity and sickness and poverty. But it wasn't just a promise. If we back up to chapter 9, we hear a story about a blind man. A man who has been blind since birth and was put out to beg. And this blind man was seen by Jesus. And upon seeing him, Jesus stoops down and gets some dirt and adds some saliva and he spreads it on the man's eyes. And then he invites the man to go wash. And this miracle allows the man to see again. And no one could believe it. Not the neighbors, not the religious leaders, not even the blind man's parents. And everyone questions and consults, and they have the once blind man tell and retell the story, but in the end, he is driven out by the authorities because of fear. But that isn't the end of our story. Jesus heard that they had driven this man out, and he goes and he finds him. Jesus, the shepherd, seeks out his sheep. Jesus, the gatekeeper, welcomes him in to be in relationship with him and to be a part of the community. This is a promise to us too, that Jesus reaches out, seeking us as to invite us into relationship with him. In this metaphor of gatekeeper, Jesus is not constructing fences and gates to keep people out, but to welcome everyone in. Jesus offers a radical welcome that brings life abundantly to all. And if an abundant life is the case, then this is also a call to us, that as followers of Jesus, we will work to uphold an abundant life for all of God's creation. The impact of this pandemic has quickly exposed the cracks in our system, from healthcare to the economy to racism. Healthcare professionals still don't have the protective gear that they need. What we thought was a robust economy quickly collapsed in only 2 weeks. People of color are contracting and dying of COVID at significantly higher rates than whites. These are cracks that we knew were there, but now they are chasms and we can no longer avoid them. This pandemic is proving to us that much of the way that we have been living is unsustainable and antithetical to holiness. We have all the military might money can pay for and courage can muster. Yet it is a microscopic virus that has exposed our weaknesses. We have invested in the best doctors and nurses and medical treatments in the world, but did not invest in the first line of defense of personal protective gear. We have lived by the lie that poor people and people of color just need to work harder and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Yet within 2 weeks, we have to spend billions of dollars to bail out corporations. 4 weeks ago, we began our Easter celebration. We celebrated the resurrection of Jesus. We celebrated that death does not have the final word. We celebrated the new life that we have in Christ. Easter is about new life and resurrection, and that life cannot go back to the way it was. And why would we want it to? Our Easter story asks the question, how shall we live in the way of Christ, who invites us into new life? So how shall we live as an Easter people? How shall we live to discern Christ's voice in the midst of a cacophony of voices pulling us in so many directions? How shall we live so that we can be the voice that rises up over all the false promises and oppressive systems to question and critique, so that all can follow the path forward toward an abundant life? Do you hear the endearing sound of the shepherd calling, inviting us into an abundant life? How shall we live when we no longer have to live behind these closed doors and we get to push them open? Who will we invite in? When the time comes to swing open our front gates, how shall we live?